Ladies and gentlemen, very welcome to our second session of the day. The irony of being plunged into darkness so shortly after our chat about infrastructure this morning is not lost on us, but we are very grateful that you came back to attend this session with us. Just two requests from our sides. If you could switch your cell phones onto silent, thank you, Dieter. And if you could refrain from using flash photography, we would appreciate it. Just a note, we are expecting there to be a switch over from generator power to normal, in inverted commas, normal electricity supply in about half an hour's time. If you could keep your seats, it should be less than 5 minutes, and then the normal electricity will kick back in and we'll resume the discussions. There'll be plenty of opportunities for you to take part and to give your difficult questions to our very carefully selected panel of experts. Thank you very much. Enjoy the session with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anli. Welcome, everybody. Welcome the people in the audience. Thank you very much for making the trouble, spending time to come listen and be part of this discussion. And then everybody online, specifically welcome to the various digital platforms. Please note that this does go out on various platforms, and certain portions of the discussion will also be distributed. So just a friendly note to the panelists. Remember, we don't have control of digital media and who listens to what and who reads what. So just keep in mind, I cannot guarantee confidentiality in this environment. So I want to just make a point of departure. For me, we've been doing this for 10 years at Nampo in Botawil. And my wish is that first of all, Nampo Cape becomes an institution in the agriculture calendar. I think it deserves that. I think the Western Cape deserves a Nampo, and I'm glad to see that most of the bigger manufacturers, companies, role players are here these next few days. So I think that is great. And then a second point that I think should not be lost on this audience. There's a massive difference in terms of the interaction between agriculture in the Western Cape with the Western Cape government, specifically the Minister of Agriculture, the Department of Agriculture, the role players, and in the rest of the country. It is sad for me to say that this kind of discussion, where you have a Minister of Agriculture taking part in the discussion, taking part in an open discussion, to take questions, to discuss the issues, will not happen in any of the other provinces. And that is if you know which roads to take to get there. That is obviously another question. But I just want to emphasize this is a privileged, and I think it is something that the rest of the country, the other provinces, should strive to getting government involved in this level. So I'm going to start with, first just to introduce my guests, and I'm going to start with next to me. Right next to me is Lennox Plaatjes. He's from PALS. He's a National Liaison Officer and Director of Bambesana Farming. So thank you very much, Lennox. Next to him is Jannie Strydom, the CEO of Agri Western Cape, then Barend Legrandsie, COO Privilege Foundation, and then Dr. Ivan Meyer, the Minister of Agriculture in the Western Cape. I'm going to start with you, Minister. The topic today is all about the rural development, rural communities. How do we make sure that rural communities, not only in the Western Cape, but in South Africa, flourishes? Because if it doesn't happen, it's got dire consequences, not only for the industries around it, for agriculture, for mining activities, but also it leaves the local government with a cash flow situation that simply can't work. And then it's irrelevant who governs it, it can't work. What is the strategy from a Western Cape side?
Firstly, thank you very much, Theo, and to the listeners and the viewers here. Firstly, let me congratulate the organizers of Nampo Cape. As you say, we want to make this an annual institution on our annual calendar. I've already spoken to Dr. Sebo Petse, my HOD. This will be on the annual calendar of the Western Cape government. This morning, the Western Cape government is meeting. Our cabinet meeting was held in this rural town. Tonight, at 6 o'clock, the Premier and the Western Cape cabinet will host the business community of this rural towns here for dinner to connect with them. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock, here at Nampo.
Welcome back. Apologies. We had to switch over from our own power back to the Eskom power. Just another point that I should mention is if you have any questions, specifically the audience watching this on one of the digital platforms, where you register, you are welcome to send us a question. So any questions will be relayed to me. So if I look at my phone from time to time, it's not because I'm bored and looking for that for the inheritance from a Nigerian relative that just passed away. It is specifically because I'm getting questions. And I think anybody watching, not only here but digitally, will realize that it is a warm day in Bredasdorp. We're all under these lights, and it's the air conditioning needs to start up. Dr. Ivan Meyer, Minister of Agriculture in the Western Cape. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Meyer, the rural areas in terms of strategy, how important is it for the government of the Western Cape?
No, thank you very much, Theo. It's very important for the Western Cape because we understand the geographical landscape of the Western Cape. The Western Cape is 129,000 square kilometers in size. Once you comprehend that, and once you understand that, and once you understand that the Western Cape has 5 district municipalities, people are living in district areas, this is the wide landscape of the Western Cape. It's about 10% of the geographical size of South Africa. And so this morning, the Western Cape Cabinet decided to host its cabinet meeting right here in this rural town. Symbolically, there's a message. This cabinet takes this rural towns and rural economic development very seriously. Secondly, this evening at 6 o'clock, the Premier and the Western Cape Cabinet will engage with the business people in this rural area together with the mayors of the 2 municipalities in this region, the Overberg and Cape Agulhas. So the cabinet takes engagement with the local communities in rural areas very seriously. Last month, the cabinet met with the community in Mossel Bay. Well, also tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock, the Western Cape Cabinet will engage with our producers and our farmers in this area. I've also invited the cabinet to take part in the whole Nampo show. I've shown them the program. Dr. Sebo Petse has also issued the program to the head of departments. So the Western Cape fully endorse the concept of rural regeneration. For us, that's the future of South Africa, and people understand the significance. But Theo, you asked me more specifically a direct question. In politics, people don't always answer you directly. I will try to do that. Our strategy has the following pillars. The first pillar is we do a study that's called the growth potential of towns and regions. Die groeipotentiaal van dorpe en stede. Wanneer jy daardie studie gedoen het, dan is jy duidelik sigbaar waar is die dorpe se onderliggende groeipotentiaal. Ons sit hier vandag in die Oeverberg distrik. Sy groeipotensiaal is die landbou, dis die koring, dis die landskap, dis canola. Almal wat hierheen gery het op ons wonderlike paaie, anders as by Nampo Botawil, het gesien die landskap, die landboulandskap. So die eerste strategie is, doen 'n studie oor die groeipotensiaal van stede. Want dan kan jy jou ekonomiese infrastruktuur plaas na die ekonomiese groeipotensiaal. Nommer 1. Die tweede strategie, en ek het dit saamgebring, sodat dit nie net in woorde is nie, maar ook in bewyslaste. Die tweede studie wat ons doen is wat ons noem 'n Municipal Economic Review and Outlook. En omdat ons in die Oeverberg is, het ek die Oeverberg distrik dit hier gebring. In hierdie dokument sien ons byvoorbeeld, wat is die groeipotensiaal, wat is die invoere, uitvoere. Hierdie streek is 1,1 miljard rand invoere, uitvoere 3,1 miljard rand se uitvoere. Exports from this region is 3,1 billion. Where do they export to? They export to the Netherlands, to the United Kingdom, to Hong Kong. But they also import to China, France, and Spain. So once you understand the Municipal Economic Review and Outlook, then you understand what is the competitive edge, the competitive strength of this region. Then you do the second thing, Theo. When the Minister of Finance in the Western Cape tables a budget, he or she also tables an overview of the provincial and municipal infrastructure. So if you want to know what is this province's attitude towards rural development, you can look at this and you will see about 30 billion rand over 3 years for infrastructure. But not only from the province, but also the infrastructure of municipalities. So that is our approach to rural economic development. Completely do a study, understand the economic basis, put the resources there. But there are two core principles of this government. One, you must appoint people that are competent. You cannot have rural economic development with incompetence. We have appointed the best head of the department in agriculture in South Africa, Dr. Seppo Peche. I am proud of him, absolute competent. The second value of this government is caring. If you deeply care for people, then you will make with them effect change. And I am proud that the Western Cape has adopted a strategy that's called the whole of society approach. In other words, we cannot solve the problem all by ourselves. That's why we form partnership and collaboration. And I think that's the solution. But we must first start with competence and then deeply caring for people. So that's our approach, working very closely with municipalities. Lastly, Theo, I realized that the best thing anybody can do for agriculture is a well-run, functional, capable municipality. If you have those things in place, farmers can flourish. That's why I had a municipal agricultural summit in the Western Cape. All the municipalities in the Western Cape came together. Yanni was also there, Lennox was there, to say how can municipalities help us so that agriculture can be the impetus for massive economic growth in the rural areas.
Thank you very much. I think that is, Dr. Meyer, that is it's heartening to hear the fact that there's a strategic, logical, rational approach to it. Yanni, why is it important for the farming community that the rural areas flourish?
Yeah, thanks Theo for the opportunity. I think, after what Minister Meyer has said, I think, is there anything more to say? But if you go and look at various studies that's been done regarding revival of your rural areas, you'll find some of the common points mentioned or issues raised is a stable or political stability in the region,
On municipal level as well.
Yeah, and competent governance, and Minister referred to it. So we're very privileged in the Western Cape to have a provincial government as we have. We've seen on the audits of the municipalities as well. But to get back to your question, I think for agriculture, there's no two ways about it. It's the cornerstone of any economy, whether it's on municipal level or provincial level or national level. And so therefore, it's crucial that our rural areas flourish and that the economy grow there and that there's investment. We need investment to create job opportunities and so forth. So at Agri-Western Cape, we've got our main focus is to influence policy and to build networks with our provincial government, our provincial department. And yeah, I'm quite privileged to say today, we've got a very good relationship, open door policy, if I might call it that, if there's any issues. And so we try to influence policies and so for the better to our members. And we've got 5, 6 policy committees with Agri-Western Cape, of which the most relevant one in this conversation is our commercial one, where we focus on all economic issues pertaining to farming and where we can assist our members to be more sustainable and to create that conducive environment to function.
And we've seen what happens if a rural community is unstable. We've seen what happens to infrastructure, access to roads, and not to mention the fact that services become more and more impossible. Barend, from your point of view, what is the ingredients required to make a town, a rural town, work, to make it attractive, to get people together?
Thank you, Theo. First of all, thank you for being with this panel, Mr. Ivan and Yanni and Lennox. And the audience here today. I think that the most important aspect of making a town to change a town is the cooperation of all role players. You can't do it on your own. Fortunately, well, today we are in a province that's actually a benchmark of how things in South Africa should be. You know, that's very fortunate that we have that. Many people ask, but what can we do? What can we do to improve our city or our town? And I normally say to people, listen, you can just go to a town like Bredasdorp, to Hermanus, to Salendam, to Montetjie, to Ceres. And then you see how things should be done. I was invited to Ceres a couple of months ago, and I was the speaker there. And the audience, as the people came into the room, the mayor walked into the room, the deputy mayor, different political parties, and then the municipality manager, and then the farmers, the church leaders, and the public. And I said to them, but listen, I don't know why you invited me. This is how the country should look like. People coming together, work together. The problem in the northern provinces, and that's not an isolated case. It's not 10 or 20 or 30 towns that's not is looking bad. 42, I think the total is 42 of the 257 municipalities received a clean audit this year. It's just an indication of what's going on in the towns as such. That to change that is not an easy task, but at least that we can start changing things that's in the hands, that's able to, for the people of that town. But number one, we must realize that the towns doesn't belong to politicians. It doesn't belong to the officials of the municipality. They represent, they represent the people. But the owners of a town are really the owners, the farmers, the people who have businesses there, the citizens of that specific town. And to change it, all those people must come together. And it is not that the politicians are not playing a very important role. No, they are playing the most important role. They were elected, we are in a democracy, they're supposed to do what they should do. But it's not happening in South Africa, unfortunately. I'm not talking about the Western Cape, it's a very good example of how should things go. But to get a town to change, they first must realize that although they pay income tax, that they still, if nothing is happening, then they will have to step in. And then we have to get all the role players, the political parties, the farmers, because in the rural areas, the small towns, farmers are playing the most important role in the small towns. The reason why people are getting out of the towns because they don't see the potential, they don't see a future, they're negative.
Opportunities.
They don't see the opportunities. What can we do to stop that? And that is to make this a solution. We are solution-driven. What can we do? Because most people just throw their hands in the air. There's nothing we can do. No, we can do. And we can do sometimes the small things. The greatest, biggest challenge in South Africa is unemployment, the inequality. The other one is the crime rate. If we can solve those two, the economy will also bloom.
I want to take that point that you say, and Lennox, I'm going to set a bit of a trap for you, so listen to this carefully. If you take the South African population of, let's say, 60 million, about 20 million is below the age of 18, so they neither count in the employment numbers, or they do, but I want to get you round numbers. The same about 20 million cannot vote, and they don't count in the employment number. So there's 40 million potential voters and 40 million potential people in the employment industry, in the employment. There's more than 25 million people without a job, but there's also more than 25 million people that does not take part in the democratic process. They're either not registered to vote or they don't pitch up. So, number one, the political system has got 25 out of 40 million people say, I'm not taking part. The economy, 25 plus out of 40 million people say, this doesn't work for me. That must be an issue that needs to be addressed. How do we go about working around that issue?
I'm still, this is the trap, successful trap, Theo. I think I want to first make two comments before trying to respond to your question. The one comment I would make would be, it's my third time speaking at Nampo Nation in Conversation. The first time speaking at home being my province in the Western Cape, and I want to appreciate the warm welcome. There's so much being said about the Western Cape. It is a tragedy that we repeatedly say these things to ourselves. You know, it's like preaching to the converted when we look at the examples of how agriculture, local government, provincial government, organized agriculture and communities are working together. I just hope at some point these messages should go through to where it really should be heard. Because speaking here to this morning through a vehicle called PALS, Partners in Agri-Land Solutions, there is no way we can build this country without following examples of working together, such as we see here in the Western Cape. And I really hope this message gets elevated some way. The leadership that you see in the agricultural sector, starting from the political leadership, is the example you want to see. I'm not only here on behalf of PALS, I'm also here as a farmer. And for me as a farmer to know I've got a local government that's working to assist me in growing and feeding our nation. I have a provincial government that's supporting. And I've got organized agriculture, looking at creating opportunities for inclusive agriculture. What better place to be as a South African? So that is my first input I want to make. Coming to your question, I think Barend would be a better place perhaps to expand more on that. But again, it's about making people realize that democracy can only work for them if they make it work for them.
If they take part in it.
If they take part in it. If we just go and do the run-through-the-mill exercise of casting your vote and then going on a holiday for 5 years, what do you expect? We need citizens to be aware you have the right to better. And better is possible because there are examples of extremely good examples of working together in this country. In the Western Cape at large and some pockets of our country where you can see, it simply signifies we can do better. And it's about time that people in South Africa realize we deserve better because we can do better.
So democracy is not voting.
I would say it's more than just voting. Voting is only exercising your mandate for whom you send. Democracy is followed up in action. Speaking to your councillor, how many meetings are we having? When are we getting the structures in place? When can we do this? We want to lead ourselves as communities. That's what we start. We'll see if you want to talk about democracy in action. Yeah, so that, in my view, would be people starting to lead themselves. And we are here to speak about the rural communities. And I would later elaborate on some good examples of our communities are screaming, on ground floor for the opportunity to lead themselves. The people are not waiting. People want to lead themselves, but we need to put our foot down and say, government, if you said in the NDP you've got a responsibility of enabling, we need to ensure we keep them to
Or the
task
agriculture
on that.
master plan.
Exactly.
Barend, the ball was thrown to you. It seems in some quarters we have our 10 official languages, of which the 10th is the only one that anybody takes any notice of, and that's protests. How do we get the communities involved that is on the fringe of society?
We are very privileged to live in a democratic dispensation, where you mentioned the fact that every 5 years we can vote. But it doesn't stop there. We can go every 5 years to vote. Secondly, the Constitution also allows people to protest, om te staak. Hulle het die reg om ook te staak as hulle En beide van daai twee is baie belangrik. But the fact is, if you have money, you take even the government to court. If you don't have the money, you go to the streets. That's what's happening in South Africa. And both are allowable. And we must have very much sympathy for people who don't have the money to go to court. They are very frustrated. And if they go to the streets because they don't get the services, for us to prevent an organization like AfriForum, don't criticize them to go to court. They must do it. The Constitution allows them to do it. But before we criticize people going to streets, let us be proactive and address the problems before the time. And then we do that, we will see less court cases and we will see less protests. Don't criticize. People are very much frustrated in South Africa. And then, to prevent that, we must be proactive, take ownership, everybody. Don't see only the fact that you can vote every 5 years as the end of the story. You sit back and you wait for the government to do everything. We can do it, and there's enough, especially over the last couple of years. And I'm very excited when I hear what the panel are saying about it. There's a movement in South Africa that people have realized that we must take our country in our own hands, and that we must be the change. The people govern, but do it as far as possible in cooperation with the government of the day.
I'm going to ask the minister a question, but Barend, I just want you to think about, I'm going to come back to to give us an example of where things nearly fell over and what was the ingredients to pick it up again. But first of all, Minister, in the previous discussion, we had a question from one of the viewers, and the question was, from a participatory solution view between, let's say, a farming community or the farmers and the community, if they were to come to the government with a solution to maintain a rural gravel road, where does government, what's the view on government from a principal point of view? Because those roads are critical for the communities, they're critical for the farmers, and they might not be a priority for even the provincial or the local government. What's the kind of thought process from a government point of view?
Thank you, Theo, for that question. We normally engage with organized agriculture about these particular conditions of our roads. We encourage municipalities and farmers to use the legitimate structures, for example, the IDP processes of municipalities. When people argue that we need to tar this road or gravel this road, the first question that we ask from a government perspective, did the farming community raise this in the official channels through organized agriculture or through the farmers' organization at the municipality that incorporated into the IDP? Once it is taken up in the IDP, and soon we will go through our MTech budgetary processes, that's the first question we normally ask. We have a priority list. I like to believe that when things are very bad, I like to go and see it for myself. For example, when there was a severe drought many years ago here in the Western Cape, Agri-Western Cape invited me on a drought tour. First law of politics, go see for yourself. When there was a flood recently, 2 years ago, also here in rivier sonder end. Jannie and I went to see the damage that it make on the farm. When there was no water flowing from the Leeu Rivier canal into the dam, I said as the Minister of Finance at the time, I want to see for myself. So the first approach that we say, let's see for ourselves, because we are not going to do what is happening in the rest of the country, that you pour money into things that you have not seen. So the first principle is evidence, data, and so on. Face those particular problems. For us, it is important to do what we call a road traffic impact assessment. We, in terms of the growth potential, if there is a growth potential, for example, the Cape Winelands is the biggest soft fruit industry south of the equator. Now, if you have that statistical fact, the biggest soft fruit industry, then the road infrastructure must support that soft fruit industry because it must go to Cape Town, to the harbour, and to the rest of the world. So our approach is when there's an economic activity that is part of the growth strategy of the Western Cape, we must look into the infrastructure support from the communities, from the government, and work in partnership. I met farmers who said, listen, if there's no money, because they understand what state capture did. State capture robbed billions of rands in South Africa. So they understand there's no money, and they say, let's partner with perhaps the feasibility study, with our grading of the gravel roads. They are willing and able to partner with the Western Cape government. But Lennox, earlier in his comment, referred to the National Development Plan. And I want to answer the question in that context. The National Development Plan says there are three things, pillars, that will take South Africa forward. One is a capable state. That's what we have here in the Western Cape. That's what Jannie referred to in terms of the clean audits in the municipalities. You must have a capable state. The second principle is leadership. Leadership from the Premier, from the government, but more importantly, leadership from society, leadership from farmers, institutions, communities. That's leadership. But there's a third very important principle, and that's where Barend was referring to, called active citizenship. Aktiewe burgerskap. En wat ons sien reg deur Suid-Afrika, so Suid-Afrika besig is om te verval, sien ons dat baie dorpe het besluit, ek gaan nou maar prakties platweg praat, bogger die regering, let's do things ourselves, en hy kan baie meer daaroor praat. Aktiewe burgerskap is, kom ons rol ons moue op, en ons doen dinge self, en daarom moet ek vir Barend sê, ek was baie aangenaam verras, en het met groot opgewondenheid Nampo, sy gesprek wat ons gehad het, by Botawil. Dit is nog altyd in my hart. En die antwoord is, as 'n dorp verval, moet jy doen wat hulle gedoen het. 4 things. Number 1, they clean the town. 2, they repair things. 3, they paint the thing. And then they plant something. That's the message that I left and I received from him when I left Nampo, Botawil. And I think that's the solution in South Africa. Clean the town, paint, fix, repair, and plant. Trees, plant, fruit, and that's the way. So the solution to South Africa's problems, and I'm afraid to say, is outside the body politic. It is within the hands of community through active citizenship. That's the real solution.
Barend, I'm going to, Lennox, or not, I'm going to come back to Lennox, but the Minister talked about your message at Botawil, but I want you to take us through an example. An example, what happened, how did you get involved, and where are we now with that process? Because I think that will assist anybody to understand where to go for solutions.
I'm so glad that the Minister, he took notice. Thank you. It's very encouraging. Yes, the CRPP process, you clean, you repair, you paint, and you plant. Why were we doing that? It's so straight, so simple, easy to understand. To address the big problems in South Africa, like unemployment and crime, you must make your town investment friendly. That's the reason why you do it. Nobody's going to invest if you drive into a town and dit lyk eenvoudig net na 'n totale warboel, veiligheid, die parke is nie versorg nie. Die munisipaliteit val uitmekaar uit nie. Because you must remember, it's not a government's municipality, it's not a government's police office. We regard it as that. It's not. It's the people's building. It's your building. You must be proud of your town. So to get people to stop in your town, to spend money there, you must make it attractive. That's the main thing. It's not small things. Those are the things that needs to be done. What we did a number of years ago, we started Kulini with that racial tension. If I can mention a few examples you maybe are very well aware of. There was a racial tension since 1994. In 2070, with the death of that boy, and there was accusations that he was murdered, the black and the white community stand like this. You know, a lot of conflict, Tabalong Township and the Kulini. They immediately, and that is why I like the people of South Africa, black and white, they immediately realize if we are not going to do something about this, this country is going up in flames. And they took the responsibility to immediately, of all the race groups, to come together and to establish a peace forum, sitting around a table. But when you sit around a table with peace talks, everybody comes with his own agenda. That's normal, you know. Well, then we became involved, and we suggest this project to say, listen, identify the things that you have in common. Doesn't matter if you're EFF or Freedom Front or DA or you're a believer or a non-believer or what your religion convictions are. Come together. Everybody needs clean water. You mentioned, Minister, the municipality, the very important role they are playing on local government. Clean water, sanitation, basic housing. No, we don't need potholes in the streets because it has an effect on safety of the economy. We need all those things. We need clean parks for children to play in a safe environment. Give attention. And then they start doing that. And the result is that since 2017, it's now 5 years ago, not even one incident again. That's the thing. Because racial relationship is the most important thing. I think we are about 4 or 5 million white people and 55 million black people in South Africa. If we are not going to work together, there's no future for anyone in South Africa. That's the number one thing. And we can't allow our towns to go down. The second one was also a race thing, and that was in Senekal, Matwabeng. You know what happened about now almost, it's now 2 years ago. You know, a lot of people from outside came, and there was a lot of, daar was baie vryhandigheid geweest.
Again with different agendas, not the towns, not the agenda of what's best for the town.
That's right.
Different political agendas.
That's right. They came there with buses, and they created the impression there's a lot of racial tension in the town, and it was not the case. They misuse it from political with their own agendas.
And I just want to stress, that came from the whole political spectrum. We're not talking about one, it came from the whole spectrum.
That's right. If we can call it, I don't like to compare,
but the
but
whole
right
spectrum.
and we, like and left and right and conservative and progressive
Whatever,
and whatever the case may be. And it's no secret, the EFF and so on came there with hundreds of people. But again, the community of Matwabeng and Senekal came together. And at that stage, they involved us. And I facilitated the process on the first meeting. And you know that Kenny Matoy, he's the EFF founder member. He sat next to me. He realized if we are not going to do something.
Exactly.
The two ANC members were there. John Mahushile from the DA was there. He was sitting there. The different church people, the farmers were there, the community were there, everybody. And the same we started the project. And suddenly, well, the people realized this is the way that we must go. And they started a project to clean and to repair and to paint, to plant in the township and in the town. Long story short, they were, is toe gekies deur kyk net verlede jaar as die town of the year in Free State, in the Free State. Town of the year Free State as a result of that project. And it's still going very well. There were 4,852 potholes. I know it. They gave the total to me, 4,852. At that stage, I had an interview with one of the radio stations, and they asked me how many potholes, and I said to them that's the total, just in the center part of the town. And at that stage, they repaired already 3,000. And 2 months later, everything was fine. Of course, there's maintenance. It's happening all over all the time. But the fact is, it was not a government. It was a team of 5 people, workers, and it's financed by the farmers and the business people of Senegal. Yeah. So it's possible. Yeah.
What's interesting is a note that for me that comes out of that is I once read, and if you agree with him or not, that's not the case. It's more the quote that he said. I think at some point Ronald Reagan said that if somebody disagrees with you 20% of the time, he's your 80% friend, not your 20% traitor.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of where we should. But Lennox, I was coming to you in terms of your model in PALS. What is the key ingredients why that could be a model to be rolled out outside of the Witzenberg area?
Thanks, Theo. And I think so much can be learned from the examples that we hear from Colini and the other areas that Barend is talking about. From the PEL side, partners in agri-land solutions, there were 5 goals set when the farmers, commercial white farmers, black farmers came together in 2014. And they said to themselves, we know where we've come from with the past of this country, but we've got a golden opportunity to do something that can reshape and change the history, of this country. Let's create successful black farmers. Let's make sure we roll out this initiative in other areas. Let's include communities. Let's make sure we focus on training, mentorship, transferring of skill. Lastly, let's make sure we build communities that are in social harmony with themselves. PELS realized that while we're growing agriculture economically and we're growing it commercially, we cannot grow in isolation from our communities. And there were intense consultations, which is the key to answer your question. Intense transparency and being sensitive to the fact that people will mistrust. Why do you all of a sudden want to work with us? We still deal with questions where people are asking what's in it for the white farmers when they get involved. But then, after working and being consistent and being transparent, a man with the name of Kavis Chambu, who's the chairperson of the group of pig farmers that PELS is currently assisting, he stood up in an address by Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, and he gave testimony of his experience of working with PELS. And listen to what he said. He said, when we started, we didn't trust. But later on, we realized these guys want nothing from us. They just want to help us. So that while they are successful, we are also successful. Thank you, PELS, that you did not even promise to give us anything, but to train us and to empower us. Communities are ready to serve themselves. The agricultural sector being the lifeblood of the rural communities, I would say we can't but invest in that leadership. We can't but invest in partnerships in local communities. That for us is where PELS have set the tone, set the example. We don't have the answers to it all, but we've got practical examples, as Barend can relate some of them. You took a group of cattle farmers whose operation of livelihood became a nuisance because they didn't have land, cattle in the road. Through PELS, they are today owners of a 60% farming business, doing well as shareholders in own right and owners. Their cattle secured on land made possible through partnership. Commercial farmer, emerging black trust. Absolutely.
You need to build some kind of trust relationship. That might come out of a conflict, out of a crisis. It might come out of consultation and strategy. It might come out of a simple survival. Yanni, in terms of, we talked about national government, but a lot where the day-to-day farmer is involved is local government. Local government that sits with a difficult budget to balance. They've got massive amounts of needs. They've got limited income. Your relationship in terms of local government, we now note that there's a greater relationship, and I think it should be commended, between the national government, the minister, and organized agriculture. But how does that boil down to the local government and the local people living in, let's say, Bredasdorp?
Well, Theo, that's a very critical point you're making there. And I think through organized agriculture, our structures, we represent 92 farmer unions in the province. So basically in every town, there will be a nearby farmer union. And like the minister referred to the summit that they had, where we were invited to address all the municipalities and to encourage them to get the local farmer union involved in when doing budgets, when there's any tension or issues in a specific area, whatever the case might be. Even through, we've seen in the lockdown with COVID, fresh food supplies. I mean, in 1 week we transferred, I think, over 105 tons of fresh fruit. Specifically in specific areas. So our structures are well formed on ground level, and I think that's the crucial part where the farmers should engage with a local municipality, because the minister referred to it. If the farming community, a rural town, can only be successful if the local municipality is fully functional and supportive of agriculture.
Yes.
May I just add to that? As an example, I recently joined as a farmer, joined in the Farmers Association in our area. And for the first time being exposed to the agenda, 2 things on the agenda that drew my attention. The one was, what is the give back? What is the contribution to community projects from local organized agriculture? Secondly was, what are the developments in local government that we need to be aware of and which we need to contribute to for the greater interest of all of us? Understanding and to confirm Johnny's point. You know, without those working relationships at ground level, I can tell you now, we will not see the successes of a Pels, we will not see the successes of a Colini, where in all these examples, it is organized agriculture lifting up their hand to say, Owens, guys, what can we do?
All right. I'm going to open the floor for questions, and then I'm going to continue with the discussion. Is there any questions? And anybody with a question? Yeah, yes, there's a question. I'm just going to quickly look if I've got internet questions. Okay. Any questions?
With the plant in Aston, which almost closed down recently, the canning plant, what can the provincial government and other role players do to prevent something like that possibly happening? And perhaps you can just give us an update, what's the current state, what's happening, and what's the future plans with it?
I think, thank you very much. It's a great question. And I want to almost link that question to the question about I think it was the Parmalat or one of the plants in Lichtenburg. And now these 2 things ended up. And because I think the end result was completely different. But, Minister.
Yes, thank you for that question. But let me first answer another issue that was raised, and I will come to that, because we did engage with those people. I think we try to institutionalize best practices. What Yanni and Lennox and Warren was saying is absolutely true in terms of the partnerships, the municipalities. When I met the mayors, I asked the mayors in the Western Cape, I want in every municipality, and there are 30 municipalities in the Western Cape, in every municipality in this province, I want one man or a woman who the farmers can relate to. In other words, one person, a farmer mustn't phone the municipality and they say the mayor is in the meeting, the mayor is at the Congress, the mayor is... I want one person that serves the agricultural sector.
I'm just going to interrupt you. Is that the case?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
So I don't want, for example, if you go to some of these towns, the mayor, for example, if you now have agriculture business in Matsikama, the mayor himself is a farmer. He said, I'm dealing with it. If you go to Worcester, the mayor has assigned a responsibility to that. If you go to Saldanha Bay, the mayor Truter, he worked with farmers. He said, I'm the contact person. So in every municipality in the Western Cape, there's one person that is the direct link to serve the needs of the municipality. Coming to Aston, we did engage with Aston, we did engage with Agri-Western Cape. We have an agriculture, agri-processing master plan. When we heard of the developments at Aston, Aston is nothing but an agri-processing master plant, and we have an agri-processing master plan. So our plan is to save jobs, 4,000 jobs. We had some discussions, the Premier, myself, and the Minister of Economic Development with the Tiger brands through Labour, Organised Agriculture, the Western Cape government, and I must give credit also to DTI, the national government. We could come together to defer the closure of the Aston plant for 12 months to look for an alternative opportunities, possible investors to save that particular town, because that town is very significant. It's in the Cape Winelands, and so we are engaging with them. They have formed a consortium, the farmers themselves, to see how they can save it. We found in our discussion something very precious, because Tiger Brand said to us they are not interested in any investor that will do asset stripping, meaning buy the place and sell all the stuff. There are some discussions still carrying on today to find a buyer. We are busy with due diligence with the banks and the industry to protect jobs. But that is a long discussion, and we have said that we want to meet with them every quarter, and we want quarterly reports. We do not want a situation that we come next year in June, and then we have the same repetitive discussions. That's why a lot of due diligence work in this regard is taken. And because it is agro-processing, and because we have committed ourselves to agro-processing master plan, we must do everything possible to save 4,000 jobs in that area.
Can I ask a question on that, on this 12-month period? Great question. Thank you very much. If you say you had everybody involved, in terms of buying the 12 months, as to say, did the Labour contribute, farmers contribute, shareholders contribute, local government contribute? Was it a joint approach of everybody taking a bit of pain to keep this going, or what was the approach of the various parties?
Well, this is the beauty, precisely as Baron has explained. People came together and said, if this thing closes, we're all going to sink. So we're not going to put demands. The worker said, we'll not take any increase. The farmer said, we won't take any increase. So they came together, and the municipality was willing. I spoke to the mayor, Skalk van Eden of Langeberg municipality. He said to me, Minister, we see the situation of this. We won't increase our tax in this context. So everybody was willing to put something in the pot to save the bigger picture. Exactly what Baron was explaining. People coming together, labor unions always demand, many times unreasonable demands, because they want a salary increase. In this case, they saw the bigger picture and said, let's save the town, let's save this factory for the greater good.
Thank you. I think that answers your question. Is there any other questions? Are you comfortable with the answer? And that didn't happen in Lichtenburg. When everybody opened their eyes, the factory was gone. It was Clover. One of the days. When everybody opened their eyes, the factory was gone. Any other questions? Yes.
This question is directed to the Minister. So earlier in your comments, you mentioned the droughts, the floods that have been impacting the local communities. I just want to know, is the department looking at ways to adapt to climate change and to mitigate that to kind of help with the rural development?
Thank you very much. Great question.
Thank you. I'm also going to ask my head of the department to add to this, because this is also a subject of conservation.
Can we get the microphone so long to the head of department?
Yes.
There we are, sir. So,
the first thing that we have done, we have done now a study called Farming in Arid and Desert Areas, so to understand what is happening in Matsikama, here in the Klein Karoo, and in the Groot Karoo. Because climate change changed everything. And I'm so happy that organized agriculture was also part of that study. And we have put in place some instruments and mechanisms. One is, for example, Fruit Look, which is a microsatellite that measures the soil content so that you use less water. So we have been using many water effective use management strategies in terms of river protection and the protection of the ecological infrastructure, gabions and infrastructure that we protect along rivers.
We are the first province in South Africa to write the Smart Agri Plan. That was in 2016. Because what is real is that climate change is here to stay. And what is key for us in the agricultural sector is about finding new ways of farming, what they call farming systems. Minister referred to what farming would look like in the arid areas. It's about changing the mindset of farmers, not farm the same way that our forebears farmed 100 years ago. Look at the new ways of farming. A month ago, it was hosted what we call a climate change, agri-scientists, young farmers dialogue. That was again deepening the message of climate change. And Yanni would also know that we're planning a drought dialogue in February next year. Again, creating this awareness to farmers, because if we don't take action now, the reality of the matter is that when we wake up, there will be no agriculture happening. So we do need to find new ways of farming, new farming systems, farming in a manner that take cognizance of the reality that is confronting us, which is, of course, climate change and all the challenges that goes with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Are you comfortable with your answer? I think I'm getting signs this means wrap up. So it doesn't mean that the air conditioner is working, it means wrapping up. So I want to just leave you with a comment that I think we need to think about. I was in the Northern Cape at one of the most successful big mega farming operations not too long ago. And there was a debate, friendly debate, lots of people discussing. And the mega farmer stood up and he said, I've got one question and don't answer me, but one question. And he looked at all the farmers around him, probably 30 or 40. He says, think about this. Why are your children in school in Bloemfontein or in Paarl? Why? You're contributing to our problem. Your children should be in school in XYZ, not in Bloem and in Paarl. And I think that is something, if you take part in this, you should think carefully about those things. But I want to thank the panel. Minister, it is specifically encouraging for me to be able to, and perhaps I sometimes am critical about politicians, but to hear a political leader analyzing with a logical, rational approach these discussions. Not turning everything into party politics, but rather talk about the problem. Minister, thank you. All the best. Barend, I think you guys are doing wonderful work. This is where our solution lies. It is trying to galvanize the communities. And I think that is very important. Yanni, I'm happy that whatever the minister says, organized agriculture in the Western Cape can attest to that and are keen to play a role with society. I think that's part of the solution. And then Lennox, we've shared a few platforms. Sure. And I think what for me is always encouraging is the complete and total commitment to finding solutions and to take your solution and to say, wait a second, this can work for the rest of the country. Absolutely. And I think the key message takeaway from me about this discussion is there is more goodwill than the press led us to believe. Beautiful. There's more people that want South Africa to work than the press wants to sell newspapers. Apologies to the press here. but we need to make sure good news doesn't sell newspapers, but good news changes the lives of ordinary South Africans for the better. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for this
Thank you,
discussion.
too.
I enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody.